Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Jacob Nunez. I am the youth minister here at Sherman Methodist Church, and this is going to be our online ministry safe training. So enjoy my monotone voice for a little while we walk through this, and we're going to try and run through it as quickly as possible. So ministry safe. We switched to this organization as our church disaffiliated from the UMC. We're partnering with Ministry Safe as part of the Global Methodist Church now, and the presentation is going to be kind of pretty similar, but there's a lot of really awesome material and a lot of awesome resources I think Ministry Safe provides. So really each year from here on out, as they unfortunately take on more cases and more scenarios, I think they're just going to give more and more training and more information for us to use. And obviously they're wanting to have their ultimate goal just to be protecting our babies, our children, our teens, our youth, our vulnerable people, our workers, our volunteers, out of harm's way from any type of abuse, from any type of allegations, and just make sure there's safe practices in place for every single person that is involved. So we're going to get started. We're going to have a little outline here of what we're going to go through. We're going to talk about really what Ministry Safe is. We're going to talk about a few definitions, why we need it, how the church is affected, and what it can, the effects on our community. We're going to walk through Sherman Methodist Church's policy, our prevention, our recognition, and reporting, and then just kind of some do's and don'ts to end it all off. So that's where we're starting from. And again, I think that there's going to be a lot more that we're going to find out and learn and have training on these next few years, especially as I continue to learn more about what Ministry Safe does and the resources they put out, which are super helpful. So it's exciting that we get to have these practices, but also, it's tragic that these practices have to be put into place. So Ministry Safe, it was founded by Kimberly Norris and Greg Love. They are attorneys, and they have a lot of experience together with addressing sexual assault abuse and protecting and defending those and arguing for those, the voiceless, and making sure that people are getting what they deserve, in a sense of putting these little ones and vulnerable people in places of tragicness. And so they provide a lot of curriculum, they provide a lot of training, a lot of resources to seminaries and just other organizations that include camps and schools across the country. And obviously their main mission is to protect children and serve those and help those and protect those who serve them. So the main verse that we always read every year, which again, it just shows the seriousness God has about his children, his love for them, and the seriousness we should take while becoming a volunteer and becoming a worker with children or vulnerable people. And it's in Matthew 18, verse 5-6, says, "Whoever welcomes a little child like this in my name welcomes me. But if anyone causes one of these little ones who believe in me to sin, it would be better for them to have a large millstone hung around his neck and be drowned in the depths of the sea." So again, pretty serious. So just some statistics that are found on Ministry Safe's website and Children's Advocacy Centers of Illinois. It's just going to read them out, and they're pretty shocking, pretty horrible. 2 out of 3 people who are abused will not talk about it until adulthood, if ever. So 67% of the people who get abused are never going to talk about it until they're adults, if ever. 96% of the people who are abused or assaulted are by someone who they know and trust. 96% of the abuses take place by someone who they know and trust. So that means only, which we'll get into in a little bit, only 10 to 4% are by people who abduct them or have no real association with them. 1 in 5 children will be sexually abused before the age of 18. So if you have a room full of 100 children, 20 of those children are going to be abused. Today, there will be 222 reports of abuse in Illinois. Today only. So that leads us into some definitions for this training. Vulnerable people are just any children or any child or adult who is unable to protect himself or herself from abuse, neglect, exploitation, or sexual abuse or emotional abuse of others. Adult is somebody who's over the age of 18 or at least 5 years older than the people they are in charge of. We'll get to that a little bit later. Someone who's not under the age of 18 is a youth, or is not over the age of 18 but under the age of 11. A child is commonly defined as someone who is under the age of 11. And then a roamer is someone who is screened and moves throughout the facility, provide some oversight and supervision to activities. So let's say you have somebody who, wants a confidential meeting. Well, it wouldn't be smart to just have that vulnerable person or youth or whoever it is and alone with the volunteer. We're gonna provide a roamer for the building and have the door open, and in places like the room I'm in has a lot of windows, and make sure that person can just walk by and see that, make sure everything's okay. And then if they need to be pulled in the conversation, they can do that. So more definitions: child abuse just means a child whose parent or immediate family member, any other person responsible for the child's welfare, commits or allows physical abuse, sexual abuse, or torture. And neglection is any child who does not receive the proper necessary care or support or medical or other remedial care recognized under the state law as necessary for a child's well-being, or other care necessary for his or her well-being. So this is some newer information, but we're going to talk about offenders, and this is pretty wild. We have two types of offenders. You have the abduction or the abductor, offender, abuser, and then you have the offender that's preferences, the preferential defender. And the abducted offender really has no interaction, just sees the child and wants the child, takes the child and goes. Again, that's that 4 to 10% we were talking about. The offender that has preference, has the opportunity for sexual action with their own age or around their own age, but prefers someone who's underage. So you think of somebody like Jerry Sandusky or Larry Nassar. Again, that is 90 to 96% of abuse cases. And so we do a great job of making sure that our kids are safe from outside people. But really what you see a lot more of is the latter, and that's horrific. And we need to do a better job of getting uncomfortable and think about the problem that could be inside our fence, and knowing that those instances of 96% are by people that are trustworthy, and we believe that are trustworthy. And the quote that really messed me up that I want to share with you guys is, they're grooming the gatekeeper first. Offenders are trying to groom the gatekeeper first, and we need to be on recognition of that and realize that people are in our midst, are trying to get in, and they're trying to make you feel like they can be trusted. Again, it's not to say, every person's a bad person. It's not to say that everybody in our midst is going to try and do this, but we need to recognize, when things are going on, that we need to vet everybody, not just because we know them and that they're going to be great at what they do. So offender steps, there's steps of actions that they're going to take. Obviously, it's like gaining access to specific kids. They're going to try and have a career or volunteer opportunity with kids. They're going to be trying to gain trust with the leaders and the other workers. They're going to be creating appearances of trustworthiness to the kids. They're going to be skilled at meeting the kids' needs and seeing like, okay, this kid needs more of this. I'm going to become more and more trustworthy and give them more and more of that, so that they trust me more and that I can have more interactions with them. They're going to start selecting children. You can think of, kids who are on the fringe. They're going to be kids that gather to play, and there's going to be some that are outside. Some of those kids might need more adult nurturing, and so they're going to see those kids an opportunity to step into their lives and to select them, to abuse them. And so they're going to be looking for children that might need someone to follow, might need someone to trust. They're going to be looking at children with a broken or single family because they might need more nurturing as well. If they're older, they might be looking for kids that are trying to get illegal substances because they can get them that because they're underage and they're overage. And then maybe they're looking for kids that have more of an idea of what idea of what sex is and what comes with sex, because the average age for a boy to be introduced to pornography is 8 years old. Obviously there is a natural inclination, a natural idea of what sex is, a natural questioning of that. But the sooner you're introduced to that, the sooner that becomes problematic, because then they kind of know what it is, but they really have no idea what it is either, or how it's handled, or what stimulates and what doesn't. And so it's just a whole mess for them. And that's another problem that we can talk about some other time. But again, that's compelling to the abuser to have someone who's kind of questioning that, even though they have no idea and have no business in knowing what that is at that age. Then they're going to push the barriers of nudity and touching. They're going to be pushing barriers of personal space. They're going to create more sexual jokes or sexual discussion and make it more okay. They're going to be having more playful and inappropriate touch with the vulnerable people. They're going to be creating a culture of accidental nudity or accidental joking again, and they're going to kind of gradually more and more introduce themselves to more nudity around that specific kid or vulnerable person. And then once the abuse goes to that full-on nudity, and whatever the abuse may take, whether it's neglection or emotional or physical or sexual, there's going to be all about keeping the silence. They're going to want to make sure that the vulnerable person doesn't talk. They're gonna try and give them privileges to make sure that they don't tell anyone. They're going to try and give them stuff so they don't tell anyone. They're going to shame and embarrass them, like say like, you wanted this, you participated in this, you'll get in trouble too if you tell. Think about your community, think about your team, like you're going to break everybody apart. So there's going to try and do everything to keep them silent, and they might even go into threats. Some could be subtle, some could be more direct. It could be as subtle as your mom's going to be so upset, or you're going to get grounded, or it could be something as serious as like, I'm going to kill your pet, or I'm going to threaten your sister, I'm going to threaten your brother. And so that's just really the steps that would happen from an offender. And so grooming behaviors that we can see are people that are going to be gift giving. I'm not saying you can't give someone in your class or your class a gift, but what they're going to do is continue to give special treatments to more and more gifts and privileges to that vulnerable person, to make them feel special and to make them feel like they can keep coming to them. They're going to be having kid magnet activities. So things like a kid specific age or a certain gender would want to do. So, boys essentially are drawn to more video games than girls. So if that groomer is trying to get boys, they might have more video games or different activities that involve games to invite that child or vulnerable person over. They're going to be, again, pushing boundaries, as we talked about. They're going to be having repeated time alone. And they're going to justify rule breaking with them, saying like, oh, it's okay because you're with me. And then again, there's playful but inappropriate touch. So again, like in some contexts, like, if a student comes up to me and wants to give a hug, or if we're giving fist bumps like that, oh, that's, okay. But there's in that context, but there's touch that is not okay in that context as well. And they're going to be pushing that inappropriate touch in those settings. So why do we need it? We want to protect vulnerable persons. We want to protect children. We want to protect youth. We want to protect our workers. We want to protect our volunteers. And obviously, too, like we want to protect our church. We want to protect our ministry. We want to further the gospel. We want to further God's kingdom. And if things like this happen in our church, in our community, but in the church in general, it hinders us. So we want to take it seriously, as we've seen in multiple occasions of sometimes it not being taken seriously, whether that's from the Southern Baptist Convention and everything that happened there in the scandal. There's the Boy Scouts of America, the Catholic Church. There's plenty of other sexual abuse cases and abuse cases that have happened, and we want to make sure that we're on the front line of this. And I imagine there's other churches, even in our own community, if you're aware of what has happened in the past year, it would be ignorant and it would be very prideful for us to think at our church that this couldn't happen here. So we want to be on the front foot. We want to be on the front lines, and we want to make sure we're doing everything we can to make sure that everybody who comes in here and works with children is safe and is vetted, and that's one, that they're making sure that they're doing the best practices as well, and that we feel like we can talk to them if they've crossed a line as well. So obviously the church is susceptible. We're a trusting organization. Families come in and out the door, send their kids to after school program literally every single day of the week here. They're here from 2 to 5 or 2 to 5:30, whatever it is, and we want to make sure they're safe. Again, trusting community. There's an opportunity of complacency. We know a lot of great people that are in our church. There's a lot of great volunteers that serve with me, but we don't want to just say like, oh, they've been doing it so long, or no way that could ever happen. There's no way that this person could ever do that. We want to make sure we're being safe, and we want to make sure that if somebody does cross the line, we can put each other in check about that. So we don't want to create an opportunity of complacency, but also too, like, as we minister to people, we get close in relationship. We share our lives together. And so individuals that want to cause harm will see that as an opportunity. We want to use that opportunity as a relationship point to show them Jesus, not harm them. So again, church is susceptible, and we want to make sure that we're on top of it. So effects of child abuse and neglect, obviously you're going to harm the vulnerable person, and that's the worst thing, and that's the most tragic thing, and that's horrible because they're going to have trauma for all their lives. There's just going to be way too much. It's just horrible. There's really no other way to put it than that. It divides the community. Whether it's your church community, whether that's an organization community, whether that's a family, whether that's school, whether that's a team, especially the family, it divides and it divides and it divides, and it eats so many people up. And obviously the worst part is a vulnerable person, but it goes way more than just them as well. It creates a lot of emotional pain for all involved. Again, it goes even to the workers and the volunteers. The parents start to question, what they may have done wrong, what they may have not have seen. The parents start questioning everything that they're involved in. They start questioning the organization. Obviously, they start questioning maybe even their friends. And there's just a lot of trauma and a lot of sifting through of emotional and mental pain that is really just difficult for everyone. They start questioning churches in the area, start questioning the school. Okay, like, what can I put my kid in? If something happened here, can I put my kid here? And is it going to happen again? Are they too much of the same thing that my kid might get abused again? Obviously, there's tons and tons of litigation that happens. And then again, going back to it, like, people that are around that person that is either the victim or the abuser start questioning, what did I not see? And they have a lot of blame. They have a lot of guilt. So there's a lot of effects of it. And so we just need to be on top of it. We need to make sure that nothing's happening. So our policy, our policy looks like this. It's right here. It's a front back thing. It's going to be in my mailbox at the church. You guys need to make sure you read through both sides, front back, before you sign the covenant. We'll get to that later. So our prevention, recognition, response, and reporting. So we have to change some things still. We got to meet before we can totally change the wordage, the verbiage on some of this, but know that it will be changed next year. But right off the first page, it says the Sherman Methodist Church's congregation's purpose for establishing this ministry safe policy and accompanying procedures to demonstrate our strong and unwavering commitment to the physical, emotional safety and spiritual growth of all of our vulnerable persons. So that leads into our prevention. That's right on the back of that first page. And, the first thing is you're going to get background check. You're going to, if you want to help out, if you want to volunteer, if you want to take part in a youth-led volunteer opportunity, you're going to get a background check. We want to just make sure everything checks out. So if you come into the church, you're not going to get a background check right when you walk into the door to go to our church. It's just when you start taking part in these ministries, you will get a background check. one-on-one rule, you're never going to be in a room alone with one kid at a time, one kid at a certain time. You're going to always try to be following that to the best of your ability. You're not going to meet with students one-on-one. And so it's just following that rule and make sure that that is not happening between a student and an adult. Open door counseling, or excuse me, I should say vulnerable person and adult. Open door counseling, again, that same type of thing. If it comes to like, a student has a confidential thing that they want to meet just with you specifically on, we're gonna have open doors in the building, cracked at least, and there's gonna be a roamer involved that we talked about earlier that's going to be outside, making sure that the conversation's appropriate and making sure that boundaries are respected. And should that roamer need to be included in the conversation, they're going to be there for that as well. 5 years or older rule, that is just essentially you have to be 5 years or older than the group that you're in charge. So, for example, for youth ministry, I have some college students, some former students that are helping out. So they can't be in charge. They can't be leading the small group of the high schoolers that they were just essentially in school with. It's too close of age, and there's too much a potential that may happen there, and that's why that rule is in place. So you have to be 5 years or older than the group you're leading. 3-month rule. That means you can't take part in any volunteer or ministry that involves vulnerable people until you've been a part of this congregation for 3 months. I believe that doesn't go as far as say you have to be a member. You just have to be actively partake in the congregation for 3 months. Annual orientation, that's this. You guys are going to do this every single year to get refreshed, get reminded, learn some new things. We're going to give advance notice to parents about different activities going on in the church to make sure they're aware of everything that's going on and know how it runs. If they have any questions, they can ask. But we'll also give them advance notice too. Really the first notice to if any abuse were to happen. You're going to sign this Safe Sanctuaries, but now Ministry Safe Participation Covenant. That's on the back. That's on the 3rd page. So there's the front 2. And then there's a 3rd page that you fill out, and it's taught you have to read through the covenant. There's a question on there that says, did you read through the covenant? If you don't read through it, that's lying. And again, this is a promise, and this is something serious that we take. So we ask that you read through it, and that you fill out the covenant, and that's going to be my mailbox as well. And you'll give that back to me. And then the background check is on the back. We do not need your driver's license number, so don't put it on there. Once we fill it out, you will cross out your social security number, and it's going to be filed in a locked safe. So yeah, those are both in my mailbox in the office. And then you're going to be signed up to be a mandated reporter. That's an online course. You have to do that every 3 years, and that will be something that you have to train and you have to work through and do to be working with the students here. So physical or recognition these are the types of child abuse that there are. Physical is essentially harm or actions that can result in serious injury to the child. It includes bruising, that includes injuries on the body, welts, bite marks, bald spots, and that's not limited to that either. You have sexual abuse. That is behavior that's imposed on a vulnerable person. That includes child pornography, suggestive behavior, suggestive comments, inappropriate photos, inappropriate videos, and that signs that could be detailed understanding of behaviors that aren't appropriate for their age. That could be pain, itching, bleeding, and genital area, and then walking or standing and having frequent UTIs. Next is emotional abuse, and that's attitude, words, behaviors toward a vulnerable person that creates a serious or emotional psychological damage. That could have speech disorders, delayed emotional development, low self-esteem, extremely demanding, aggressive, angry behavior, depressed, anxious thoughts. Neglect is any serious disregard to a vulnerable person's supervision or care or discipline. So that's going to be abandonment of caregiver or parent, unattended medical needs, constant lack of supervision, poor hygiene, unusually tired. And then ritual includes the hazing and cultic practices. And we have a little pamphlet that you can pick up again in my mailbox, and that's from the Children Advocacy Centers of Illinois. And so that's in my mailbox as well, to go through all these recognitions and see for you guys to have that to resource for you. Response and reporting. So this is what we're going to do, and as a church, as our policy states. So we're going to notify the parents or the legal guardians. We're going to make sure until that parent legal guardian is there, we're going to ensure that the vulnerable person's safety is safe until the parent arrives or legal guardian. We're going to make sure the accused abuser is not met with hostility or anger, because we don't want that to bubble up and create more hostility, and make the environment for the workers, for the other children, for the same child, the victim, unsafe. So we're going to remove them, and we're going to have a leave if they're a volunteer or worker. We're going to notify a head pastor, event leader, and we're going to notify proper law enforcement and state agencies. Again, all these are in order, but, if the parent is the abuser, we're obviously going to do contacting the police first. But also, too, again, these are in order, but they're all going to be really going on at the same time. We're going to notify the conference authorities, our church insurance, our attorney. We're going to get a confidential record from you, and you can do that with the event leader. And we're going to have a brief and honest statement about to the congregation, which that's not going to include the victim's name. That's not going to include the person who reported it. That's not going to give any unnecessary details to the congregation. The person who reports it, you need to be prepared to work fully with the investigation, cooperate with that. And we're going to designate somebody from our SPRC to just talk to the media. So that way, as things come out and different rumors come out, we can always say, this person is the person that is going to be talking to the media, and this is the person that you're going to get all your information from. So anybody else that you're hearing it from is either doesn't know what they're talking about or shouldn't be talking. So it's important that it's against the law not to report any type of child abuse of any type, even if it's not at a church or by a church member or a church volunteer. You don't need to be able to prove that abuse is taking place. You just need reasonable suspicion. Your reports can be anonymous, and then there's good faith in reporting. There's immunity in that, so a person can't sue you if the allegation ends up being false. So important things to remember, to do and to not do. We want to listen carefully to the vulnerable person. We want to tell them that we believe him or her, because again, that abuser is probably trying to get them to feel like that they shouldn't be believed, or that they are lying, or that they did take part in it. We want to tell the child that it wasn't his or her fault, and we want to let the child know that we're going to do stuff in place to stop the abuse. We're going to not make promises we can't keep. Like, we're not going to tell anyone, because we are going to tell some people. We're going to report it, and we're going to make sure that doesn't happen again. We're not going to try and push more details from the child. We're not going to ask direct questions to the child, and we're never going to discuss what the child told us to people that it doesn't involve. It doesn't need to be spread around the work break room. It doesn't need to be spread around the volunteer team. You just need to tell the event leader, the authorities that it pertains to, and there'll be a brief statement given to the other people, and no other details need to be shared with them. With that too, what you want to do as well is, this child or vulnerable person is coming up to you because they love you, and because they trust you, and because they feel protected and by you. So during this investigation, it's going to be important that when you do see this child, that you are there for them. You don't have to make sure you have to stay up all night and worry about them, and you don't have to be constantly in contact with them. But when you do see them, make sure that we are extra loving to them, and that you are just continuing to be that support system that they care or that you care for them and that they know you care for them. So that's our training. Those are the resources. If you guys have any questions or have difficulty knowing what you need to do next, again, the covenants in my mailbox that you need to sign, fill out, sign. Background check on the back. Don't need your driver's license number. If you don't know if you need to do a background check, just do it, and I can black out everything. And then that policy is going to be in there too that you guys need to read through. If you don't know about mandated reporter, I'll be looking up those too and be sending that out in a link just so you guys have all these resources. You have all my notes, and if you guys will have your covenant that you sign as well. So if you have any questions, you probably have my number. If you're a part of this ministry, if you're a part of the church, reach out, email me, stop by the office. Love to see you and chat. Thank you guys. Again, this is our training for the 2024-2025 year.